Alright, welcome back to video 3. In video 3, we will, starting video 3, we're going to do the practice problems that are in your notes. We're starting with number 1. In this lesson, you are continuing on with independence-dependence, but you're also looking at proportional relationships and relating that to tables, graphs, and you will also look at unit rate. So this is pretty much a combination of everything that you've done. You will be graphing as well, so please follow along. If you have any questions, you can write it here. You can ask me next time. You can pretty much go back to the video, pause the video at any time. So please try to understand and follow along. Okay, so let's begin. Problem number 1. It says, the following table shows the relationship between the amount of cherries in pounds and the cost. Now, this table is a horizontal table. We are more used to vertical tables, meaning the tables that look like this, where you have X on the left side and the Y on the right side. Notice that this table does not have X or Y, and it's a horizontal. We are going to figure out which one's X and which one's Y by figuring out the independence and dependence variables. Okay, so let's try to understand the table first. The table is comparing the cost that you pay for buying cherries and the amount of cherries you buy. And it says 1 pound of cherry costs $1.50, 2 pounds cost $3, 3 pounds cost $4.50, and so on. So let's see. The first question is asking us, is the weight dependent on the cost, or is the cost dependent on the weight? So which one is dependent on what? Well, to figure this out, we can pretty much, if you understand how buying things work, then you can figure this out. So for example, does the weight dependent on the cost? So if you buy, do you usually buy, when you buy cherries, do you pay first or do you have to wait? You need to weigh how much of cherries you have and pay according to how much cherries you're buying. You pretty much have to figure out how much cherries you have and figure out how much you're going to pay for that, right? When you buy cherries, you take a bag of cherries and you weigh it. Then let's say it weighs 3 pounds. And according to this table, if it weighs 3 pounds, you have to pay $4.50. It doesn't really matter how much of the cherries you buy. The amount of cherries you buy is your choice. So you don't have to write this down, but I want you to read, how much cherries you buy does not matter. It could be any amount. So that's why the amount should be the independent. But let's look at the next sentence. But how much you pay, which is the cost, depends on how much you buy. So basically this second sentence here, how much you pay, the cost depends on how much. So that will be the amount or the weight. Basically, I give you the answer. So the cost depends on the weight, and the second part will be the sentence we agreed to. So this is how I will write my answer. I will say, the cost of cherries is dependent on the weight because how much you pay for cherries depends on the amount of cherries you buy. I answered, I said the cost is dependent on the weight, and I gave explanation with the sentence because at the end. That will be the perfect answer. You may pause the video to copy this down. Okay, so for the second part, part B is asking us, is this a proportional relationship and how do you know? Well, proportional relationship, we went over this many times and we practiced it with table of values. For this, you need to remember that proportional means there is a constant of proportionality. And constant of proportionality, in our class, we represented it as variable k. But how do we find the constant of proportionality? Well, we need to figure out what everything is being always multiplied by. That's one way to figure it out. So let's try that. Okay, so let's look at the table. We know that the cost is dependent, so dependent variables are the y values, and the amount was the independent, so this will be the x. Now, to find the constant of proportionality, what is x being multiplied by to find the y value? Well, the first one, if you buy 1 pound of cherries, you get $1.50. And how does that work? Basically 1 times what gives you 1.50. Again, since this is x, you're multiplying x to a number to find y. It's from bottom to top. That's very important. You're multiplying a number to x to find the y. That's what we learned. Y depends on x. You need to multiply or add or do something to x to find the y value. And in this case, we're going to multiply 1 times 1.50 to get 1.50. The next part, 2 times 1.50 is 3. And if I do the rest of them, 3 times 1.5 is 4.5, 4 times 1.5 is 6, 5 times 1.50 is 7.5. So basically, everything is being multiplied by 1.50. Is this proportional? Yes, because everything is being multiplied by 1.50, and the constant of proportionality is 1.5. Now, I will tell you that this is only one way to find constant of proportionality. And there is actually another way to find the constant of proportionality. I've done this with some of you, so if you don't recognize this, please try to pay attention. There's another way to find constant of proportionality, and this is what we're going to do from now on. Another way is to do y value divided by x value. So y divided by x, which is the same as y over x, because division is fraction. Basically, the y value here is 1.50. You divide it by x, 1.50 divided by 1 is going to give you 1.50. Then the second one, y value is 3, so 3 divided by 2 is also 1.5. If you do it for the rest of them, 4.50 divided by 3 is 1.50, 6 divided by 4 is 1.50, 7.5 divided by 5 is 1.50. That should be 5 here. So, yes, you can use the calculator to find this, but again, the constant of proportionality is 1.50 because y divided by x is always 1.50. This is another way to find constant of proportionality, and this is the way that we're going to do pretty much from now on. So going back to part B, is this a proportional relationship? Yes. And how do we know? Because the amount, which is the x value, is always multiplied by 1.5 to get the y value. So the constant of proportionality is 1.5. You could also say that this is proportional because y divided by x value is always 1.5. So the constant of proportionality is 1.5 or 1.50. That will be the answer to part A and part B. You may pause the video to copy this down. When you're done, you can come back and continue on. Now I'm going to move on to part C. Part C, I put this graph table for you. You already have this on the very top of your page. I wanted to just put it here so that it's easier for us to graph because we're going to use this table to graph the points here. So points are always x comma y. So let's write that. From the previous problem, we said cost is a y value because it's dependent on the amount. So this is the x value. So using that table, we could say the first point is 1, 1.5. The second point is 2, 3. The third point is 3, 4.5. Make it better. And the fourth, 6 for the next point. And the last one, its x value is 5, so 5, 7.5. I got all those points from that table. And I'm going to graph them. Notice that the cost is a y value, so on the y-axis, it's labeled as cost. And the x-axis is labeled as amount, because amount is on the x, as you can see on the table. So let's graph it. First point, 1, 1.5. Sorry, that's parentheses. So we're going to start with the x value. When x is 1, the y value goes up to 1.5. So let's put a dot there. Then the next point is 2, 3. So we're starting at x2, horizontal line, and go all the way up to 3. And 3, 4.5. So starting at 3, it goes all the way up to 4.5. And 4, 6 goes all the way up to 6 here from 4. Then the next point, 5, 7.50. So we're going to have to connect these dots using the ruler. Now I'm going to do that here. So I'm going to take a ruler. I'm going to connect these dots and draw a line. If I do that, that's actually not a line. It's called a line segment. Lines, you need to extend it all the way. So back to the ruler. And this time, I'm going to extend it all the way down to this side. It's not really perfect anymore. We use a different color. And then the other side, if I extend it all the way, now that's a line. And if you have noticed, when you extend it, the graph, the line goes through the origin. And this is a straight line of points that you can have for part C. That's what your graph should look like. Now let's move on to part D. For part D, you need to refer back to the graph. It says, examine the graph, look at the graph, and what conclusions can you make? What can you tell from the graph? So you probably should be looking at your graph. This is a graph that I have. Now, what can we say about the graph? Well, we notice that the graph, it doesn't look like a straight line, but it should be, is a straight line, and it goes through the origin. I'm sure you're familiar with those descriptions. Our graph is a straight line, and it goes through the origin. You may write this down if you want to, okay? But these are just for the notes. So, what can we say if the graph is a straight line and goes through the origin? What happens? If you remember, that means this is a proportional relationship. Remember, if the graph is a straight line and goes through the origin, it's a proportional relationship. So, what conclusion can you make from this graph? We can say the graph is a straight line and it goes through the origin, so this is a proportional relationship. And boom, right there. From the graph, we can say the line's a straight line, it goes through the origin, so it shows a proportional relationship. You may pause the video to copy this down. Then, part E. What point on the graph represents the unit rate? Now, to answer this question, you need to know what unit rate is. What's a unit rate? Unit rate is when you have one amount of something. And the key words that we went over when we were learning unit rate was the word per, each, every. Now, if you go back to that table with unit rate, the table with cherries, remember 1 pound of cherries was $1.50. In other words, it was $1.50 per pound. Now, if you look at the graph, we said the cherries were $1.50 per pound. That's a hint for your unit rate. We need to find that unit rate from the graph. So where does it show on the graph that the cherry costs $1.50 per pound? Looking at the graph, The x-axis tells you the amount in pounds, and the y-axis is the cost. If it's per pound, that's 1 pound. And 1 pound is right here, number 1. And $1.50, the point here, when it's 1 pound, it says it's $1.50. So this point right here, that we can write as 1, 1.50 is the unit rate. It's a unit rate on the graph. So my answer will say that the point 1, 1.50 represents the unit rate because it means that 1 pound of cherry costs $1.50. So that's the end of the last question, and that's the end of problem number 1. Again, you can pause the video, you can rewind, go back to review anything that you missed or anything that you did not understand. Please ask me questions. You can write questions and ask me later. If not, you may move on to problem number 2. Problem number 2 will be in the next video. I would recommend you to try to do it on your own and come back to the video to check your work. All right, so that's the end. I will see you in the next video. Very good. Thank you.